pretty much everyone wants to retire someday. We collectively clock into our jobs every morning and we clock out every night feeling that same sense of when is the weekend finally gonna get here. And then we spend our work days daydreaming about a time when we'll finally be able to sleep in, go on all the beach vacations, or to all the sports games, or to all the midday brunches, whatever the dream retirement is to you. Basically, we spend a lot of time salivating over the idea of never having to work again. But reality is a little bit different than that. Retirement age has been 65 in everyone's mind for a long time now. And maybe you've even seen on TikTok that people are making it happen a lot younger than that. And maybe if you just stick it out and work hard enough, then that could be you too. But retirement isn't an age, it's an amount of money. And it's specifically the amount of money that you could afford to live off of for the rest of your non-working life. And the truth is that people are having to push off retirement more and more, not because they want to, but because they don't have enough saved up. And on top of not having enough saved up, people are living longer in countries like the US, and the new retirement age is more like 67. Now that might not sound like a big difference, but combine the fact that the retirement age is getting further away, and the fact that people aren't saving as much for retirement, especially with the age of the pension plan pretty much in the past, then you can start to see the problem. So let's focus on the solution. How much money can you afford to spend in retirement anyways? And if you're thinking to yourself that you already know what the 4% rule is, then we're gonna cover why that might not be the golden rule that you should actually stick to. So after you give this video a big like down below, because it really helps us out, then we'll jump into it.
Okay, so there's a lot of different visions out there of what it means to retire, or more specifically, when you should even aim to retire. Now, I know you guys have probably heard of the FIRE movement, or the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, and basically there's a lot of people out there who like the idea of not having to work like crazy their entire lives, and instead, if they choose FIRE, it will look a lot like this. So picture this. You would ideally work really, really hard while you're young, save 70+% of your income, invest that money, and then when your retirement account hits that specific number, you know the number, you then retire and live off of your investments for the rest of your life. Now that obviously sounds great, but there's also people who are choosing to just use some of the FIRE principles, specifically the rules surrounding how much they can actually spend in retirement. Now, in this case, maybe they keep working until they're old because they like it, but once they hit that retirement age, whenever that is for them, they still need to know how much they can actually afford to spend. Now, before we even dive into what that number is, we still need to look at the fact that most people shouldn't even be concerned about what they'll do once that time comes and they're not working anymore. At least not yet. In reality, right now, they need to be more concerned about the fact that most people aren't even on track with their retirement savings to even have the same standard of living as what they're used to while they're working. Now, the Federal Reserve just came out with some new retirement data, literally last month in May, but keep in mind that this data is from 2021. So within the report, 25% of non-retired adults said that they don't have any savings at all. And of the 75% of people who said that they do have some savings for retirement, only 40% of those people think that their retirement is on track, meaning that they're actually saving at a rate that will get them enough money to actually retire. And now you have to remember that this is what these people think. It doesn't actually mean that they're on track. So what this means is that 25% of people aren't actually saving at all in the US, and of the people that are, 60% of them aren't on track, and then the other 40, who even knows, they might not even be on track either. Now, we also read another study from the GAO that said that as of 2017, the median retirement savings for Americans between 55 and 64, so right before the accepted retirement age, it's only $107,000 per year. Now, anyways, that's basically where people are right now with their retirement savings, but what should they actually have saved? Let's start by breaking down the math of what, this certain number that means you can retire actually is.
Now, this is where the 4% rule comes in. It's the rule that the FIRE movement was built on, and it's also how people know how much they can actually live off of every year in order to retire and never worry about running out of money. Now, keep in mind that there's been some changes to this theory that we're gonna cover in a few minutes, but first we need to break down what the 4% rule is. It's based on something called the Trinity study that was done back in 1994, where 3 professors made a simulation that looked at every year of stock market returns from 1926 till 1995. And this means that they covered some really crazy times in the market. Like if we looked at just the S&P 500 returns over that time period, there were some big crashes, like during the World Wars and the Great Depression. Now, on top of the time period they looked at, they basically tried to simulate every possible combination of investing factors, like if your portfolio was 100% stocks, 100% bonds, or anything in between. And they also looked at different rolling periods, like 15, 20, 25 years and more. Now, what they came up with is even if you retired at the absolute worst time in the market, right at the peak of things starting to crash, is that you could live off of 4% of your investment portfolio value for up to 30 years. To be a little bit more specific, the calculation actually works by spending 4% of your savings and investment portfolio in your first year of retirement. And then after that, you adjust for inflation moving forward. Now, if you stick to this, then you shouldn't run out of money. Picture it this way. If your investments are growing at the average 8% per year, and if inflation's at its usual 2% and you spend 4%, then you still have a 2% buffer for your investments to keep growing. Now, remember that these are averages, so some years the return's gonna be higher, some years it's gonna be lower, and some years inflation might look a little different too. Now, for about 30 years, this has been the rule that a lot of people have accepted and used to base how much they need to save for retirement. And if you look at it backwards, you need to figure out how much you wanna be able to spend in a year when you're retired. Let's say that's $50,000. $50,000 would be 4% of 1.25 million. So that means 1.25 million is how much you'd need to put away for retirement to be able to spend 4% or $50,000 per year once you do retire.
Now, this whole 4% rule thing really has a lot of people excited. Like we were saying before, the FIRE movement kind of revolves around this strategy. And keep in mind that this strategy might work really, really great for some people, but there's also been some critiques that have been coming out over the last few years, especially in 2022 where we were seeing those higher inflation numbers than, what we've been seeing in the last, I would say, few decades. What's interesting is that we're talking 8.6% in the US last month, which is up from the month before. Now, considering that we're likely going into this period of low returns for the next few years, and if we couple that with high inflation, we're looking at most people having a less optimal investment portfolio than what the historical averages are. Once again, this isn't as big of a deal for people that are retiring in the long term, because like we've been saying a lot, if you've been tuned into our videos, in the long term, which means several decades, the market historically has always recovered and grown even higher than before, even after some of the worst crashes, right? The problem's more so for people who are hoping to retire early and in the short term off of this rule. I mean, if we really think about it, in the short term, 4% per year doesn't really give you that same buffer room as it did in our original example. Now, here's where things get interesting. The original creator of the 4% rule, Bill Bengen, he actually changed the rule to being 5% earlier this year in 2022. Now, if you're one of those people that are thinking, wait, it went up, meaning you could actually spend even more per year than you did before. If you're one of those people that are wondering how the hell that makes any sense, well, you're not alone, right? A lot of people actually disagree with this because inflation's obviously really high and they're worried that it might remain high for the next few years to come. Now, because of this, a lot of people actually think that we needed to go in the opposite direction. And it's funny because Morningstar actually came out with an article earlier this year stating that they believe that it's actually 3.3%. That would be what they deem the safe withdrawal rate for a balanced portfolio. Not 4%, not 5%, 3.3%. They actually came up with this chart that shows a more specific view based on exactly how long you'll be retired for and how much your portfolio is in stocks versus bonds. Also, that 3.3% is for balanced portfolios, meaning a mix of stocks and bonds over a 30-year retirement period. Overall, our takeaway is that there's not really this perfect rule that you can just stick with exactly to the point where you're not even taking another logical look at your own strategy. Now, what I will say is good about considering a 3, 4, or 5% rule is that it gives you an initial idea of how much you actually need to have in your investment portfolio. And, at the end of the day, that number is a lot higher than what most Americans and Canadians have right now.
So here's where we're at. The 4% rule is kind of dead, mostly because it's not this perfect standard anymore. There's a debate on it needing to be a little lower or a little higher. But either way, many people aren't saving enough or really investing enough to hit this perfect benchmark anyways. Now, this all might be sounding a little bit negative, but what we want you to be feeling is more realistic. It doesn't help to just pretend that you're gonna be good to go for retirement. And it also doesn't help to feel like the sky's falling either. Instead, you need a plan. And you need to be able to adjust your plan as things happen in the economy. So step number 1, you should be investing for your retirement. We actually get a lot of pushback whenever we do TikTok or Instagram Reel videos saying that people should ideally be keeping some of their money each month for future them. People seem to want to spend it all right now, and we always see, but what if I die? Now, our answer to that is always, what if you don't die? Which is actually a lot more likely. People are living longer, and according to data from the World Bank, over 80% of Americans live past age 65. So you're most likely gonna live to what you're picturing as the retirement age. Now, step number 2 is that you should be focusing on increasing your income. This is a really important part of creating more future wealth for yourself. It's making more so that you can invest more and then you have more to live off of later. And what goes hand in hand with this is not falling into lifestyle creep. Now, it's really easy to make more money and then spend more money. There's always more things that you want to buy or more things that you could buy. And when you have more money, then it takes a lot of self-control to actually not go ahead and buy it. And if you do spend more every single time that you make more, then you're not helping future you out more at all. Instead, if when you make more money, you actually put the difference between your old income and your new income into investments, it can have a massive impact on your return in the future. And whatever you would have bought with the money otherwise, it probably would have been forgotten within a few weeks anyways. Now, please don't think that we're saying to never buy anything for yourself right now. My favorite saying is that you could buy anything, but you can't buy everything, so make sure you keep that in mind. Now, last up, step number 3 is to be flexible and to always keep learning. You could spend less some years, and other years you can spend more. You can keep making an income in retirement, maybe just less or in a job that you enjoy more, but overall you need to know that you have options.
Okay, so the last thing we're gonna throw at you is that if you need a place to start on how to actually come up with how much you'll even wanna spend a year once you hit retirement, we're using $50,000 as an example in this video, but you can always start off with a retirement calculator. Now, we did a whole video on retirement calculators a while back, so, make sure you check that out. And, if you even want some more resources, we'll have some retirement calculators linked in our description box below. Now, most importantly, if you haven't liked the video yet, then please give us a like down below. It obviously helps out the channel a ton. Make sure you subscribe right there as well, and leave us your comments, right? Like, we love going back and forth with you guys, so yeah, make sure you leave your comments, make sure you like, the vibes. If you haven't checked out any of our previous videos, obviously check them out next door. We will be back. The vibes, guys. Let's go.